My name is Irina Smith, and I'm 29 years old. For 8 years, my wealthy parents treated me like their personal servant, while my younger sister Madison lived like royalty. Every Christmas dinner, every family gathering, I was in the kitchen wearing a black uniform while she entertained guests in designer dresses. But last Christmas Eve, when my father called me poor and useless like a maid in front of 20 VIP guests, he had no idea he was about to make the biggest mistake of his life. What my family didn't know is that I'd been hiding a secret so explosive it would destroy everything they thought they knew about me. A secret that would turn their world upside down in the most spectacular way possible. Before I tell you how one billionaire's 4 words changed my family forever, and why my father is now begging for my forgiveness, like this video if you've ever been the family disappointment who shocked everyone. Now let me take you back to that December evening when everything changed, starting with the phone call that set this revenge story in motion. I've been staring at these documents for the past hour, but my mind keeps drifting back to my childhood in Scottsdale. Growing up in the Smith household meant understanding your place from an early age. My father, Bob Smith, was a successful investment banker who retired at 55 with more money than he knew what to do with. My mother, Pat, built her own empire in real estate, selling million-dollar homes to Phoenix's elite. And then there was Madison, my younger sister, 26 years old and the undisputed golden child of the family. Madison could do no wrong. When she graduated college with a marketing degree and landed a job as a coordinator making $65,000 a year, my parents threw her a party that cost more than most people's annual salaries. They invited half of Scottsdale's social circle to celebrate their successful daughter. Meanwhile, I was in the kitchen, preparing appetizers and serving champagne to guests who barely acknowledged my existence. That's been my role for the past 8 years, ever since I turned 21. Every holiday gathering, every dinner party, every family celebration, I was expected to cook, serve, and clean while Madison basked in the spotlight. Dad would introduce her to his business associates as our family's rising star, destined for great things. When people asked about me, he'd wave dismissively and say something like, "Irina's not cut out for the business world like Madison and me. She's better suited for domestic work." The worst part wasn't even the work itself. I actually enjoyed cooking and organizing events. The worst part was how invisible I became the moment Madison walked into a room. At family dinners, she'd regale everyone with stories from her marketing job while I refilled water glasses and cleared plates. My parents hung on her every word, asking follow-up questions and offering advice. When I tried to contribute to conversations, they'd give me polite but disinterested smiles before steering the discussion back to Madison's latest accomplishment. Dad was particularly brutal in his assessments. During one memorable Thanksgiving dinner 3 years ago, his golf buddy asked if I had any career aspirations. Dad actually laughed out loud before saying, "Irina doesn't have the business instincts that run in our family. She's more of a behind-the-scenes person. Good at the practical stuff but not strategic thinking." The comment stung because I'd been quietly building my own business for months at that point, but I hadn't told anyone yet. That was the moment I decided to prove him wrong, but I was going to do it my way. In 2018, I took $5,000 I'd saved from various odd jobs and started Apex Events. I deliberately chose a name that didn't include Smith because I wanted to succeed or fail on my own merits, not because of family connections or expectations. For 6 years, I've been living a double life. To my family, I'm still unemployed Irina who can't hold down a real job. They think I live in some tiny studio apartment barely scraping by. In reality, I own a penthouse downtown and run one of Phoenix's most successful event planning companies. We specialize in high-end corporate events, celebrity weddings, and luxury parties. My team of 75 employees across 4 states looks to me for leadership and vision. The documents spread across my desk right now represent months of preparation for what could be the biggest deal of my career. Next week's meeting isn't just another client consultation. It's a potential acquisition offer that would value my company at more than my parents' entire net worth combined. My phone buzzes against the polished wood of my desk, jolting me back to the present moment. The caller ID shows Mom and my stomach immediately tightens. Pat Smith doesn't call unless she needs something, and her timing is always impeccable in the worst possible way. I answer on the 3rd ring. "Hi, Mom. Irina, thank goodness you're available." Her voice has that familiar tone of barely contained urgency mixed with condescension. "I need you to come home immediately. We're hosting Christmas dinner tomorrow night, and I completely forgot to arrange for catering." My grip tightens on the phone. Tomorrow night is Christmas Eve, Mom. Most catering companies are already booked or closed, which is exactly why I need you to handle it personally. We have 20 very important guests coming, including some of your father's former colleagues and several prominent local business owners. This dinner is crucial for maintaining our social standing in the community. I can hear the assumption in her voice, the same assumption she's made for 8 years, that I'll drop everything and rush to their rescue because that's what good daughters do, that my time isn't valuable because my life isn't real in their eyes. What about Madison, I ask, already knowing the answer. Pat's laugh is sharp and dismissive. Madison is bringing her boyfriend to meet everyone. She can't be stuck in the kitchen when she needs to make a good impression. Besides, you know how these events work, Irina. You're so much better at the practical arrangements. That's what my mother calls my expertise in event planning, as if organizing seamless experiences for hundreds of people is just common sense rather than a specialized skill that commands premium rates. I'm looking at my calendar, and I notice something interesting about her guest list. So these former colleagues of Dad's, are we talking about people from his investment banking days? Yes, of course. Some very successful people who could open doors for Madison's career. Your father specifically invited the Hendersons and the Montgomerys. Oh, and that tech entrepreneur who moved to Scottsdale last year. What's his name, Chen? My blood runs cold. Alex Chen. The same Alex Chen whose company has been researching Apex events for the past 3 months. The same Alex Chen I am supposed to meet with next Tuesday to discuss a potential $50 million acquisition of my business. Mom, I need to think about this. What's to think about? Pat's voice rises with irritation. Family comes first, Irina. This is important for all of us, and frankly, it's not like you have anything else going on. I've already told everyone that my daughter will be handling the dinner preparations personally. The assumption stings because it's so automatic, so complete. In her mind, I'm still the family disappointment who should be grateful for any opportunity to contribute something useful. She has no idea that while she's been planning this dinner party, I've been negotiating deals that would dwarf Dad's best banking year. My other line starts blinking and I can see it's James Wilson, my COO, probably calling about the Chen meeting preparations. The irony of the timing would be funny if it weren't so infuriating. I'll call you back, Mom. Irina, wait. Don't you dare make this complicated. We need you here by noon tomorrow to start preparations. And please try to dress appropriately. These people will judge the entire family based on appearances. The line goes dead, leaving me staring at my phone and the blinking notification that James is still trying to reach me. 24 hours from now, I'll be standing in my parents' kitchen, invisible once again, while the man who could make me one of the wealthiest women in Arizona sits at their dining room table, completely unaware that the maid serving his dinner runs the company he wants to buy. I call James back first, needing to ground myself in reality before dealing with my mother's assumptions. His familiar voice brings immediate calm to the storm brewing in my head. Irina, we just got confirmation from Chen's team. The meeting is definitely Tuesday at 10 a.m. They're flying on Monday night and staying at the Four Seasons. His voice carries excitement that I should be sharing, but right now I feel nothing but dread. James, there's a complication. Alex Chen is going to be at my family's Christmas dinner tomorrow night. There's a long pause. Your family's dinner. How is that even possible? My father invited some of his old banking contacts. Apparently, Chen moved to Scottsdale last year and they met at the country club. James knows enough about my family situation to understand why this is a disaster waiting to happen. So Chen will see you serving dinner before he sees you as CEO. The irony in his voice matches what I'm feeling. If I go, I'm thinking about refusing. Irina, you've worked 6 years for this opportunity. Don't let family dynamics derail the biggest deal of your career. After I hang up, I walk to the floor-to-ceiling windows of my corner office. 23 floors below Phoenix spreads out in the desert sunset, a city I've conquered without my family's knowledge or approval. Apex events didn't start as revenge against their low expectations. It started as survival. 6 years ago, I had $5,000 in savings and a burning need to prove I was worth something. I began with small birthday parties and anniversary celebrations, working 18-hour days to build a reputation. Maria Santos was my first real hire, a talented chef who'd been overlooked by established catering companies because she lacked formal culinary school credentials. Like me, she understood what it felt like to be underestimated. James came aboard 8 months later when we landed our first corporate client. He had an MBA from Arizona State but couldn't break into the old boys network that dominated Phoenix business circles. Together, we built something that none of the established players saw coming. Our breakthrough came in year 2 when we planned a tech conference for 800 attendees. The event went flawlessly, and word spread through Silicon Valley's expanding Arizona presence. Celebrity weddings followed, then Fortune 500 corporate retreats. By year 4, we had locations in California and Nevada. This year, we expanded into Colorado. The numbers tell the story my family refuses to see. 75 full-time employees. 4 locations generate combined annual revenue of $12 million. Contracts with A-list celebrities, professional sports teams, and multinational corporations. The penthouse I live in downtown costs more per month than Madison makes in a quarter. My phone buzzes with a text from Maria. Kitchen team prepped for Henderson wedding Saturday. Menu final approval needed by tomorrow. Even my staff has better communication skills than my family. I'm reviewing vendor contracts when my phone rings again. Mom, according to the caller ID. I let it go to voicemail, then immediately regret it when I hear her message. Irina. I've been thinking about tomorrow's menu. Since you'll be handling everything anyway, I've decided to make it extra special. I'm talking to several people about potential business opportunities for Madison, so presentation will be crucial. Don't disappoint us. The casual entitlement in her voice triggers something deeper than frustration. She's not just asking me to cook dinner. She's asking me to perform my assigned role as the family failure while she uses the evening to advance Madison's career. The same career that's built on our parents' connections rather than actual achievement. I call her back and she answers immediately. Mom, I need to be honest with you about something. Irina, please don't make this difficult. I've already confirmed with everyone that you'll be handling the dinner. I'm not going to be your servant tomorrow night. I'm the CEO of Apex Events. We have 75 employees and annual revenue of $12 million. The silence stretches so long I wonder if the call dropped. Irina, this isn't funny. I'm not trying to be funny. I've been running this company for 6 years. We have offices in 4 states and clients you'd recognize from magazine covers. Her laugh is sharp and cruel. Honey, you need help. This fantasy life you've created is getting out of hand. You're delusional if you think anyone believes you run some imaginary company. The word delusional hits like a physical blow. It's the same dismissive tone she's used since I was a child, the same refusal to consider that I might be capable of more than she imagined. Mom, I can show you contracts, bank statements, employee records. Irina, stop, just stop. I don't know what game you're playing, but it ends now. You will be at our house tomorrow by noon, and you will prepare dinner for our guests. If you try to embarrass this family with your ridiculous stories, I will make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you really are. Her threat hangs in the air between us. Make sure everyone knows what kind of person I really am. The irony is suffocating. What kind of person am I? Mom. You're the kind of person who lies to get attention. The kind of person who can't accept reality. The kind of person who would rather live in fantasy than face the truth about her limitations. Each word is carefully chosen to wound, to reinforce the narrative they've constructed about me. In their story, I'm the family disappointment who needs to be managed and contained. And what if I don't come tomorrow? Then you're no longer welcome in this family. Her voice turns ice cold. I've protected you from your father's disappointment for years, Irina. Don't force me to stop. After she hangs up, I sit in my office as darkness settles over Phoenix. Through my windows, I can see the lights of Scottsdale in the distance, where my family lives in their carefully constructed reality. Tomorrow night, they'll gather around their dining room table, never suspecting that the daughter they've written off as a failure could buy and sell most of their guests. But there's something else bothering me about tomorrow's dinner party. I pull up the guest list Mom mentioned and cross-reference it with Dad's old banking contacts. The Hendersons and Montgomerys aren't just former colleagues. They're current competitors in the investment world, people who would love to see Bob Smith's reputation take a hit. My father is so eager to show off his successful family that he's invited his business rivals to witness what he thinks will be his moment of triumph. He has no idea he's walking into a trap of his own making, with me as the unwitting centerpiece. The phone rings one more time, and this time it's James again. Irina, I've been thinking about the Chen situation. What if this is actually an opportunity? An opportunity to what serve? Appetizers to the man who's about to offer me $50 million and opportunity to control the narrative. If Chen sees how they treat you, he'll understand exactly what kind of person he's doing business with. Someone who built an empire without family support deserves more respect, not less. His words stick with me as I finally lock up the office and head home to my penthouse. Tomorrow night, I'll make a choice that will define the rest of my relationship with my family. I can play the role they've assigned me one more time, or I can finally show them who Irina Smith really is. I decide to go to Scottsdale on Christmas Eve morning, not because I'm giving in to my mother's demands, but because I need to end this charade once and for all. If Alex Chen is going to be there, then maybe it's time for my family to see exactly who they've been treating like hired help for the past 8 years. I arrive at the Smith family mansion at 11:30, 30 minutes before Mom's deadline. The house looks like something from a luxury home magazine, which makes sense since Pat staged it herself. Every surface gleams with expensive decorations, and the smell of pine sol mixed with cinnamon candles creates that artificial holiday perfection she's famous for. Mom greets me at the door wearing a black cocktail dress that probably cost more than most people spend on Christmas presents. Her smile is tight and victorious, the expression of someone who's gotten her way through sheer force of will. Thank goodness you came to your senses. She ushers me toward the kitchen without bothering with pleasantries. I've laid out your uniform on the counter. Black slacks, white button-down black vest. Very professional looking. The uniform sits there like a costume for a role I've outgrown, but I put it on anyway. Looking at myself in the powder room mirror, I see exactly what my family sees when they look at me. The help. The disappointment, the daughter who never quite measured up. The first guests arrive at 6, and I watch through the kitchen window as expensive cars fill the circular driveway. I recognize several faces from local business magazines and political fundraisers. These aren't just dinner guests. They're an audience for whatever performance my parents have planned. Dad appears in the kitchen at 6:15, already 3 drinks into his evening based on the flush in his cheeks and the way he's gesturing. He's wearing his favorite navy suit, the one he calls his power outfit, and his Princeton class ring catches the light when he waves his hands. Arena, make sure you stay invisible tonight until it's time to serve. We have very important people coming and I don't want any distractions. The word invisible hits exactly as intended. In his mind, my presence is a liability to be managed, not an asset to be celebrated. Madison arrives fashionably late at 6:25, wearing a red dress that shows off her figure and her confidence. She looks radiant in the way that only comes from never doubting your place in the world. Her boyfriend Tyler follows behind her like an eager puppy, clearly overwhelmed by the wealth on display. She barely glances at me as she heads to the living room to mingle, but I catch her whispered comment to Tyler. Don't mind my sister. She's basically the hired help. By 7 o'clock, the house is full of voices and laughter. I'm arranging appetizers on silver platters when I hear Dad's booming voice from the dining room already telling stories to impress his guests. Through the doorway, I can see him holding court at the head of the table, gesturing with his wine glass for emphasis, and then I see him. Alex Chen sitting 3 seats down from Dad, looking polished and attentive in his charcoal gray suit. He's younger than I expected, maybe mid-40s, with intelligent eyes that seem to take in everything around him. When he laughs at Dad's jokes, it sounds genuine rather than polite. My hands shake slightly as I carry the first round of appetizers into the dining room. Years of muscle memory kick in as I move around the table, placing small plates and napkins with practiced efficiency. I've done this dance hundreds of times, invisible and silent, while important people discuss important things. Alex glances up when I place his appetizer plate, and our eyes meet for just a moment. There's something in his expression that makes me pause, a flicker of recognition that doesn't quite make sense. He studies my face with the intensity of someone trying to solve a puzzle. Dad's voice cuts through my confusion. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to propose a toast to my daughter Madison, who just landed a promotion at her marketing firm. She's making $65,000 a year now, which is pretty impressive for someone her age. The table erupts in polite applause and congratulations. Madison beams and raises her glass, accepting the praise as her natural due. I continue serving, moving like a ghost around the periphery of their celebration. Bob, you must be so proud to have such accomplished children, says Mrs. Henderson, one of Dad's former banking colleagues. She's a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s who built her own investment firm after leaving Dad's company. Dad's laugh is loud and slightly slurred. Well, Madison certainly takes after her old man when it comes to business sense. She's got that natural instinct you can't teach. What about your other daughter? Asks another guest, a city councilman whose face I recognize from campaign billboards. She seems very capable. The room goes quiet in that particular way that happens when someone asks an uncomfortable question. I'm standing at the sideboard refilling the water pitcher, but I might as well be a piece of furniture for all the attention anyone pays me. Dad's expression shifts and I can see him calculating how to respond. The alcohol has loosened his tongue, and his natural contempt is harder to hide than usual. Arena, he gestures in my direction without really looking at me. That girl is poor and useless like a maid. She only knows how to serve. The words hit the dining room like a physical blow. Conversations stop mid-sentence. Wine glasses pause halfway to lips. Even Madison looks uncomfortable, though she doesn't contradict him. I freeze at the sideboard, the water pitcher suddenly weighing 1,000 pounds in my hands. 8 years of suppressed anger and humiliation surge through me, but I force myself to remain still. Professional. Invisible, Mrs. Henderson clears her throat awkwardly. I'm sure she has her own talents, Bob. Dad waves dismissively, warming to his theme. Look, I believe in being honest about people's limitations. Irina never showed any aptitude for business or leadership. She's better suited for domestic work. At least she's useful in the kitchen. Several guests exchange uncomfortable glances. Tyler stares at his plate like he wishes he could disappear. Even Madison shifts in her seat, though she still doesn't speak up. But it's Alex Chen's reaction that catches my attention. He's not looking uncomfortable or embarrassed like the others. He's studying me with laser focus, his brow furrowed in concentration. When our eyes meet across the room, I see something that makes my breath catch. Recognition. The silence stretches for what feels like hours, but is probably only seconds. I can feel the weight of 20 pairs of eyes, some curious, some uncomfortable, all waiting to see what happens next. My father's cruel words echo in my head, poor and useless like a maid, Mrs. Henderson shifts in her seat, clearly uncomfortable with the turn the conversation has taken. The city councilman clears his throat and reaches for his wine glass. Tyler stares at his plate like he's memorizing the pattern on the china. But Alex Chen doesn't look away. If anything, his scrutiny becomes more intense, like he's trying to solve a puzzle that's been bothering him all evening. I watch as he reaches slowly into his jacket pocket and pulls out his phone. His thumb moves across the screen with purpose, and I see his eyebrows raise slightly as he finds whatever he's looking for. My heart starts beating so hard I'm sure everyone can hear it. There's something in his expression that terrifies me, a look of dawning recognition that makes my mouth go completely dry. The moment stretches between Alex Chen and me like a live wire, electric with possibility and danger. I can see the exact second when recognition clicks into place behind his eyes. His expression shifts from polite dinner guest to something much more intense, like a businessman who's just spotted an opportunity nobody else has noticed. I'm still holding the water pitcher frozen in place beside the sideboard when Alex reaches into his jacket pocket and pulls out his phone. His fingers move quickly across the screen, and I watch his eyebrows raise slightly as he confirms whatever he's looking for. The rest of the table has moved on from Dad's cruel assessment of my worth, returning to safer topics like the unseasonably warm December weather and plans for New Year's Eve in Scottsdale. Madison is telling some story about a marketing campaign that went viral, and the guests are making appropriately impressed noises. But Alex isn't listening to any of it. He's staring at me with the intensity of someone solving a complex equation, and I can practically see the gears turning in his head. After what feels like an eternity, but is probably only 30 seconds, he sets his phone face down on the table and clears his throat. The sound cuts through Madison's story like a knife. Conversations pause as 20 pairs of eyes turn toward the tech billionaire, who's been quietly observing from his seat. Dad straightens up, clearly pleased that such an important guest wants to contribute to the evening. Alex stands slowly, his movements deliberate and controlled. He's taller than I expected, probably 6'2", and he carries himself with the quiet confidence that comes from having more money than most small countries. When he speaks, his voice carries easily across the dining room. "Excuse me, Boss Smith, can I have a word?" The entire room goes silent. Not the polite quiet that comes when someone important is about to speak, but the stunned silence that follows a verbal bomb dropping in the middle of polite conversation. I feel the water pitcher slip in my suddenly sweaty hands and catch it just before it crashes to the floor. Dad's face goes through several color changes, settling on an alarming shade of red that clashes with his navy suit. He looks around the table as if searching for someone to explain the joke, then back at Alex with obvious confusion. "I'm sorry. What did you just call her?" Alex's smile is perfectly pleasant, but there's steel underneath it. I called her Boss Smith because that's who she is. Madison's mouth actually falls open. Tyler looks like he's trying to disappear into his chair. Mrs. Henderson and the other business guests are leaning forward with the hungry expression of people who sense drama about to unfold. Dad's confusion is rapidly turning to anger. "What, Boss Alex? I think you've had too much wine. She's nobody. She's just the help." The word help hangs in the air like a slap. I've been called worse things by my father, but somehow having it said in front of Alex Chen makes it cut deeper than usual. My face burns with humiliation, but I can't seem to move or speak. Alex's expression doesn't change, but something cold flickers behind his eyes. He reaches for his phone again, and this time he turns the screen toward Dad. Your daughter is Irina Smith, CEO and founder of Apex Events, one of the most innovative event planning companies on the West Coast. The silence that follows is deafening. Dad stares at the phone screen like it's written in a foreign language. Mom sets down her wine glass so hard it makes a sharp clink against the table. Madison's face has gone completely white. I believe we have a meeting scheduled for next Tuesday. Alex continues, his voice conversational but carrying to every corner of the room. My team has been looking forward to discussing a potential acquisition. We've been following Apex Events for quite some time now. My legs feel like they might give out. The water pitcher suddenly weighs 1,000 pounds, and I set it down on the sideboard with hands that are visibly shaking. This isn't how this was supposed to happen. I came here to tell them myself on my terms, not to be exposed by a stranger at their dinner party. Dad's face cycles through confusion, disbelief, and something that might be panic. That's impossible. She doesn't have a job. She lives in some tiny apartment and can barely pay her bills. Alex turns his phone toward the rest of the table, and I can see he's pulled up the Apex Events website. There's my professional headshot prominently displayed under the About section, along with company statistics that would make most small business owners weep with envy. 75 employees across 4 states, Alex reads aloud. Annual revenue in the 8-figure range. Client list includes Fortune 500 companies, A-list celebrities, and professional sports organizations. He looks directly at me. Quite impressive for someone who supposedly doesn't have a job. Henderson actually laughs, a sharp sound that cuts through the tension. Bob, you didn't know your own daughter runs a multi-million-dollar company. The humiliation on Dad's face is almost painful to watch. His mouth opens and closes like a fish gasping for air, and I can see him trying to process information that completely contradicts everything he thought he knew about me. Mom finds her voice first. This is ridiculous! Irina, tell them this is some kind of mistake. But I can't speak. My throat feels completely closed, and all I can do is stand there clutching the edge of the sideboard while my entire world tilts sideways. This isn't how I imagined this moment. In my fantasies, I was in control. I chose the timing, the words, the setting. I revealed my success like a trump card played at exactly the right moment. Instead, I feel like a fraud who's been caught in an elaborate lie, even though everything Alex is saying is absolutely true. Madison finally finds her voice, and it comes out as a strangled whisper. Irina, is this real? Alex answers before I can. Very real. I've done my homework on Apex Events, Miss Torres. Your sister has built something extraordinary. In fact, the primary purpose of next week's meeting is to discuss a potential acquisition offer. How much? The question comes from Mrs. Henderson, who's clearly enjoying the chaos she's witnessing. Alex's smile is perfectly professional. Let's just say it would be a life-changing amount for most people. Dad's wine glass slips from his fingers and shatters against the hardwood, floor red wine spreading like blood across the polished surface. The sound seems to break whatever spell has been holding the room frozen, and suddenly everyone is talking at once. But all I can hear is the rushing sound of my own heartbeat as I stare at Alex Chen, the man who just destroyed my family's entire understanding of who I am with. Nothing more than a smartphone and the truth. The chaos around the dinner table feels surreal, like I'm watching someone else's life implode in slow motion. Voices rise and overlap as guests pepper Alex with questions about my company, while my parents sit in stunned silence among the shards of Dad's broken wine glass. How long has she been running this company, Mrs. Henderson demands, her business instincts clearly engaged. 6 years, Alex replies calmly, never taking his eyes off me. Started from nothing and built it into one of the most respected event planning firms on the West Coast. Madison's voice comes out as a strangled whisper. Irina, why didn't you tell us? The question hangs in the air between us, loaded with hurt and accusation. How do I explain 6 years of deliberate deception? How do I tell her that I tried to share my success once early on, only to be dismissed and ridiculed? That I learned it was easier to be invisible than to fight for recognition that never came? I find my voice, though it comes out shakier than I want. You never asked what I did for a living. You just assumed I was failing. Dad finally recovers enough to speak, his face cycling between rage and humiliation. This is impossible. Someone's made a mistake. Alex's expression hardens. There's no mistake, Mr. Torres. I don't make $50 million acquisition offers based on mistakes. The number hits the room like another bomb. Tyler actually chokes on his wine. Several guests gasp audibly. Even Madison looks like she might faint. $50 million for my company. For the business I built while they treated me like hired help. Dad's face turns a deeper shade of red as he processes the $50 million figure. He lurches to his feet, swaying slightly from the wine, and points an unsteady finger at Alex. You're confused, Mr. Chen. Someone's obviously fed you false information. My daughter doesn't run anything except errands. This is some kind of elaborate scam. The accusation hangs in the air like poison gas. Several guests shift uncomfortably in their seats, and I can see Tyler pulling out his phone, probably texting someone about the drama unfolding at his girlfriend's family dinner. Mom finally finds her voice, and when she speaks, it comes out as a shriek. Irina, stop this right now. You're embarrassing our family with these ridiculous lies. Tell Mr. Chen the truth. Her words hit me like a physical slap. After 6 years of building something extraordinary, my own mother's first instinct is to assume I'm lying rather than consider that she might have been wrong about me. Madison stands up so quickly her chair scrapes against the hardwood floor. Her face is flushed with anger and something that looks like panic. This is pathetic even for you, Irina. What kind of sick attention-seeking game is this? Something inside me finally snaps. Maybe it's the word pathetic, or maybe it's the way she says it like I'm a child throwing a tantrum. But for the first time in my adult life, I find my voice in this house. You want proof? I pull out my phone with hands that are steadier than I expected. Here's my business bank account. I turn the screen toward the table, showing the balance that reflects our most recent quarterly deposits. That's $3.2 million in our primary operating account. Dad squints at the screen, his expression cycling between confusion and denial. That could be fake. Anyone can Photoshop numbers. I swipe to the next screen. Here's our employee payroll system. 75 people on full-time salary with benefits. I swipe again. Here's our corporate tax return from last year. 8-figure revenue. Mrs. Henderson leans forward to get a better look at my phone. Her business instincts clearly engaged. Those look legitimate to me, Bob. They're fake. Dad's voice rises to a near shout. My daughter is unemployed. She lives in a studio apartment and can barely afford groceries. I look around the table at faces ranging from curious to horrified to openly skeptical. These people have known my family for years, and they're watching us destroy ourselves in real time. I don't live in a studio apartment, Dad. I own a penthouse in downtown Phoenix. I drive a Tesla Model S. I employ people who depend on me for their livelihoods and health insurance. Mom's wine glass slams down on the table hard enough that red liquid sloshes over the rim. Enough, stop lying. You're making a fool of yourself and us. The irony is so thick I almost laugh. They're calling me a liar for telling the truth about my success, while they've been lying to themselves about my failures for years. More guests are starting to make polite excuses and head for the door. The Hendersons gather their coats with uncomfortable smiles. The city councilman checks his watch and mentions an early morning meeting. Within minutes, half the dinner party has evaporated, leaving behind the wreckage of my family's reputation. Dad seems to realize he's losing his audience, and his desperation makes him louder and more aggressive. You're still nothing, he shouts, pointing at me with a shaking finger. You'll always be the failure in this family. I don't care what lies you tell or what fake documents you show people. His words echo off the dining room walls, bouncing back at us with ugly clarity. The remaining guests look mortified. Tyler has gone completely pale. Even Madison looks shocked by the venom in Dad's voice. If you continue this charade, you're no longer welcome in this house. Do you understand me? You're disowned, cut off, no longer part of this family. The threat that has controlled me for years suddenly feels empty. How can you disown someone you never really claimed in the first place, Alex? Chen has remained silent through this entire meltdown, but I can see him taking mental notes of everything he's witnessing. His expression is unreadable, but there's something calculating behind his eyes that makes me think this dinner is going to have consequences far beyond what my family realizes. My phone buzzes with a text, and I glance down to see a message from Carlos. Maria and I are outside. Are you okay? Before I can respond, the doorbell rings. Mom looks around wildly, probably wondering which of her remaining guests is making such an early exit. But when she opens the front door, it's not a departing guest standing there. Carlos Mendoza and Sarah Kim step into the foyer, both still dressed in business attire from what was probably a late strategy session at the office. Carlos has his usual confident bearing, but I can see concern in his dark eyes. Sarah looks like she's ready for battle, her laptop bag slung over her shoulder and her expression sharp with professional focus. Mom stares at them in confusion. I'm sorry, but who are you? Carlos steps forward with the easy charm that's made him so successful with our celebrity clients. Carlos Mendoza, executive chef and co-founder of Apex Events. This is Sarah Kim, our CFO. We're here to pick up our CEO. The word CEO hits the remaining dinner guests like another bombshell. Madison actually stumbles backward. Dad's face goes completely white. Sarah pulls out her tablet and turns it toward the room. If anyone has questions about the legitimacy of Apex events, I have our complete financial records client testimonials and business licenses right here. We're also featured in this month's Phoenix Business Journal as one of the fastest-growing companies in Arizona. The evidence is overwhelming now, impossible to deny or dismiss. My team stands beside me like bodyguards, professional and competent and completely real. But Dad isn't ready to surrender his narrative. His voice drops to a dangerous whisper. "Get out of my house. All of you now." Carlos looks at me with raised eyebrows. "Ready to go, boss." The word boss in his familiar voice feels like coming home after a long, painful journey. I look around the dining room one last time at the faces of people who never really saw me, and I realize I'm finally ready to leave them behind. I wake up on Christmas morning in my Phoenix penthouse with the worst emotional hangover of my life. Last night feels surreal, like something that happened to someone else. The confrontation. Alex Chen's revelation. My parents' meltdown. Walking out with Carlos and Sarah while my family screamed threats behind us. My phone shows 17 missed calls and 43 text messages, most from numbers I don't recognize. Word travels fast in Scottsdale's social circles, and apparently last night's dinner party meltdown is already becoming local legend. At 8:30 a.m., my phone rings with a number I do recognize. Harold Whitman, the family attorney who's handled the Torres legal affairs for the past 20 years. I almost don't answer, assuming my parents have already called him about pursuing some kind of legal action against me for humiliating them. "Miss Torres, I'm so glad I finally reached you. I've been trying to contact your family since Tuesday, but it seems there's been some confusion about scheduling. Confusion is one way to put it. What can I do for you, Mr. Whitman?" "We need to schedule a reading of your grandfather's will. Charles Torres passed away peacefully in his sleep on Monday evening, and his final instructions were very specific about timing. The news hits me like a physical blow. Grandpa Charles was 92 and had been in declining health, but somehow I thought he'd live forever through sheer stubborn determination. He was the only person in my extended family who ever really listened when I talked, who asked follow-up questions about my life instead of just waiting for his turn to speak. "I'm so sorry for your loss," Mr. Whitman continues. "I know you and your grandfather had a special relationship. He spoke of you often. When is the reading today at 2 p.m. if possible? Your grandfather was insistent that the will be read on Christmas Day, and only in the presence of immediate family members. I spend the morning in a strange emotional fog, grieving for Grandpa Charles while simultaneously dreading another confrontation with my parents. By the time I arrive at Whitman's law office in downtown Scottsdale, my nerves are stretched to the breaking point. My parents are already seated in the conference room when I walk in, their faces carefully composed in what they probably think looks like dignified grief. Madison sits beside them wearing an appropriate black dress and the kind of solemn expression she perfected for childhood church services. Nobody acknowledges my entrance. Dad stares out the window while Mom examines her manicure with laser focus. Madison glances at me once, then looks away like I'm a stranger who wandered into the wrong meeting. Mr. Whitman settles at the head of the polished conference table and opens a leather folder with ceremonial gravity. Charles Torres was very specific about his final wishes, and he spent considerable time crafting this will to reflect his true feelings about his family. The first several minutes cover the standard legal language and minor bequests to charities and longtime household staff. Then Whitman reaches the section that changes everything. To my granddaughters Madison and Irina Torres, I leave the Torres Family Trust, established in 1987 and currently valued at approximately $15 million. Mom sits up straighter. Madison's eyes widened with obvious anticipation. Even Dad looks interested for the first time since I walked in. However, Whitman continues reading directly from the document. The distribution of this trust reflects my assessment of each granddaughter's character and potential. To Madison Torres, I leave 40% of the trust assets, with the hope that this inheritance will provide her with security and opportunity to grow. Madison smiles, clearly pleased with what she considers her fair share of Grandpa's fortune. To Irina Torres, I leave 60% of the trust assets. Her entrepreneurial spirit and determination to succeed without family assistance demonstrate the values I most admire. She has shown that true success comes from within, not from the advantages provided by family name or connections. The silence in the room is deafening. I can feel my parents staring at me in shock, while Madison's face cycles through confusion, disbelief, and mounting anger. But Whitman isn't finished. Additionally, I leave to Irina Torres my 30% ownership stake in Desert Peak Investment Group, the firm her father co-founded before his retirement. Dad actually gasps. Desert Peak Investment Group is his old company, the business he built over 25 years before, selling his remaining shares to his partners. 30% ownership would make me a major shareholder in a firm worth millions. How is that possible? Dad's voice comes out as a strangled whisper. Whitman adjusts his glasses. Your father sold his shares to the other partners when he retired, but your grandfather quietly purchased a 30% stake through a shell corporation. Charles Torres believed the company had excellent long-term prospects. The implications hit me like a freight train. I'm not just inheriting money, I'm inheriting power. Real, tangible influence over the business Dad spent his career building. Madison finds her voice first, and it comes out as an accusation. This is impossible. Grandpa always said we were both equal in his eyes. Your grandfather left a personal note explaining his decision, Whitman says gently. He pulls out a handwritten letter in Grandpa's familiar spidery script. Irina has built something remarkable without asking for help from anyone. She started with $5,000 and built a multi-million-dollar company through talent, hard work, and integrity. Madison has potential, but has not yet shown the same drive for independence. I hope this distribution will encourage both granddaughters to reach their full potential. Mom's careful composure finally cracks. This is outrageous. Charles was clearly not thinking straight in his final days. We'll contest this immediately. I'm afraid that will be difficult, Whitman replies calmly. Your father specifically anticipated that possibility and took extensive measures to ensure the will's validity. He underwent comprehensive mental competency evaluations, had multiple witnesses, and documented his reasoning thoroughly. Dad's face has gone completely white. He knows the Desert Peak Investment Group stake alone makes me wealthier than he ever was during his banking career. Combined with the trust fund and my company's value, I'm suddenly worth more than the rest of my family combined. She manipulated him, Madison says suddenly, her voice rising with hysteria. She must have poisoned his mind against us while pretending to be the perfect granddaughter. Whitman's expression remains professionally neutral, but I can see disapproval flickering behind his eyes. Actually, your grandfather specifically mentioned that Irina requested he not acknowledge her business success publicly out of respect for family harmony. He was quite proud of her discretion. The revelation stuns them into silence. Grandpa knew about Apex events all along, and he respected my choice to keep it secret. He saw what my parents refused to see, and he made sure his final act would acknowledge the truth they'd spent years denying. The will reading ends with my parents storming out in fury, promising to contest every word of Grandpa's final wishes. Madison follows them with tears of rage streaming down her face, shooting me looks that could melt steel. I sit in the empty conference room for several minutes after they leave, trying to process the magnitude of what just happened. Whitman packs his papers with the careful deliberation of someone who's witnessed countless family implosions over contested wills. Your grandfather was a very astute man, Miss Torres. He anticipated this reaction and prepared accordingly. How prepared, I ask, though I'm not sure I want to know. He had his mental competency evaluated by 3 independent physicians within the past 6 months. He videotaped himself explaining his reasoning. He had 2 witnesses present when he signed the final version, and he specifically instructed me to inform you that if your family attempts to contest this, you should not hesitate to defend it aggressively. The word aggressively sounds strange, coming from the mild-mannered attorney, but I can hear Grandpa's steel underneath it. He knew exactly what kind of fight this would trigger. I drive home through the empty Christmas Day streets of Phoenix, my mind spinning with implications I haven't fully grasped yet. $15 million, 30% of Dad's old investment firm. Combined with Alex Chen's acquisition offer, I'm suddenly looking at generational wealth. My phone buzzes with the text from a number I don't recognize immediately. This is David Kim. Can we meet? There are some things we need to discuss. David Kim. The name is familiar from business circles around Phoenix, a corporate attorney with a reputation for handling complex mergers and acquisitions. I'm confused about why he'd be texting me directly until I remember Carlos mentioning we'd consulted with Kim's firm about the potential Chen deal. I text back, sure. My office in an hour, actually. Would you mind meeting at your family's house? I'm already here. My family's house. I stare at the text in bewilderment. Why would a corporate attorney be at my parents' house on Christmas Day when I arrive in Scottsdale? David Kim is standing in the circular driveway talking to someone on his phone. He's tall and lean with the kind of confident bearing that comes from winning high-stakes negotiations. His suit probably costs more than most people spend on a car, and even from a distance I can tell he's completely comfortable in environments where millions of dollars change hands. He ends his call as I approach and extends a hand with a professional smile. Irina Torres, we finally met in person. His handshake is firm and confident, but there's something in his dark eyes that suggests this meeting isn't entirely about business. Before I can ask what he's doing here, the front door of my parents' house opens and Mom appears. She looks terrible, her carefully applied makeup streaked with tears and her hair disheveled from what was probably hours of angry phone calls to family members and attorneys. When she sees David, her expression shifts from grief to something resembling panic. Mr. Kim, please, you don't understand the situation. David's smile remains perfectly polite, but there's steel underneath it. I understand the situation quite well, Mrs. Torres. I witnessed most of it firsthand last evening. Suddenly the pieces click into place, and I stare at David with new understanding. You were at the dinner party. I was, as Alex Chen's legal counsel and personal friend. He asked me to attend as his guest, and I have to say, it was quite educational. Mom wraps her arms around herself like she's trying to hold something in. Mr. Kim, surely you can understand that families sometimes have disagreements. What happened last night was just a misunderstanding. David pulls out his phone and opens what looks like a notes app. Would you like me to read back some of the things that were said? I took quite detailed notes, given my professional obligation to document potential legal issues. The blood drains from Mom's face. Legal issues, verbal abuse, public humiliation, defamation of character, emotional distress. David's tone remains conversational, but each word hits like a hammer blow. When someone publicly calls a successful CEO poor and useless like a maid, that creates liability. Dad appears beside Mom in the doorway, and I can see he's sobered up considerably since last night. His face is pale and drawn, and he looks like he's aged 5 years in 24 hours. Now wait just a minute, Mr. Kim. You can't threaten us in our own home. I'm not threatening anyone, Mr. Torres. I'm simply explaining the legal reality of what I witnessed. David slides his phone back into his jacket pocket. Your daughter has grounds for several causes of action. Should she choose to pursue them, the implications sink in slowly. Not only do I have legal grounds to defend Grandpa's will, but I also have potential claims against my own parents for how they've treated me. The power dynamic in my family has shifted so completely that I'm having trouble processing it. Irina, Mom says, and her voice has a desperate quality I've never heard before. Honey, please. We love you. We've always loved you. We just didn't understand what you'd accomplished. The word love sounds foreign coming from her, like she's speaking a language she doesn't quite know. For 31 years, love in my family was conditional, performance-based, something that had to be earned through service and silence. You only love me when you need something from me, I say quietly. That's not true. Dad's voice cracks slightly. You're our daughter. Of course we love you. Madison appears behind them, her face still flushed with anger from the will reading. Even now, with everything laid bare, she can't hide her resentment. I don't care how much money you have now, Irina. You manipulated Grandpa and everyone knows it. David steps forward slightly, and his presence suddenly feels more imposing. Miss Torres, I'd be very careful about making accusations of manipulation without evidence. That ventures into slander territory. Madison's eyes flash with defiance. Are you threatening me too? I'm informing you of potential legal consequences for your words and actions. David's smile never wavers, but it doesn't reach his eyes. My job is to protect my client's interests. My client. The possessive pronoun hangs in the air between us, loaded with implications I'm only beginning to understand. Actually, David continues, turning back to my parents. There's something else Irina should probably tell you. Something that might help you understand just how much your family dynamic is about to change. He looks at me with raised eyebrows, clearly giving me the choice of whether to reveal whatever secret he's referring to. I stare at him in confusion, trying to figure out what he could possibly know about me that I don't remember telling him. Then it hits me and my heart starts racing. The dinner party. Alex Chen's legal counsel, personal friend. The way he said my client with such casual ownership. David Kim isn't just representing me in business matters. The way he's looking at me, the protective stance, the intimate knowledge of my situation. This isn't professional courtesy. This is personal. David's protective stance and the way he says my client makes something click into place. The personal investment in my situation, the immediate availability on Christmas Day, the detailed notes he took at dinner. This isn't just professional representation. I take a breath and look directly at my parents, who are still standing in their doorway like refugees from their own lives. There's something else you need to know about David and me. Mom's eyes darted between us with growing panic. What now? We got married 6 months ago. The words come out steadier than I expected. David Kim is my husband. The silence that follows is so complete I can hear a neighbor's dog barking. 3 houses down, Dad's mouth actually falls open. Mom grabs the doorframe for support. Madison makes a sound like all the air has been sucked out of her lungs. But there's more. I continue, placing my hand on my still flat stomach. I'm 3 months pregnant. This time Mom does collapse, sinking down onto the front step with her head in her hands. Dad stumbles backward into the house. Madison just stares at me like I've announced I'm from another planet. The tactical shift is immediate and shameless. Dad appears back in the doorway within seconds, his face transformed from anger to desperate charm. Irina, sweetheart, congratulations. This is wonderful news. The word sweetheart sounds alien coming from him. In 31 years, I don't think he's ever called me anything more affectionate than my name. Mom lifts her head and suddenly there are tears streaming down her cheeks. Fake tears, perfectly timed and expertly deployed. Oh, honey, I'm so happy for you. We're going to be grandparents. Her acting would be impressive if it weren't so transparent. 12 hours ago, she was screaming that I was delusional and worthless. Now that there's a grandchild in the picture, I'm suddenly honey and sweetheart. Madison remains silent, but I can see the jealousy burning behind her eyes. Once again, I've stolen attention that she considers rightfully hers. The fact that it's through marriage and pregnancy, 2 major life events she hasn't achieved yet, makes it sting even more. We need to talk about this inside, Dad says, trying to regain control of the situation. As a family, work through our misunderstandings. David steps closer to me, his presence solid and reassuring. Actually, Mr. Torres, I think we're fine discussing things right here. The fresh air seems appropriate given the toxic atmosphere I witnessed last night. Dad's jaw tightens, but he forces another fake smile. I was drunk last night. Said things I didn't mean. You know how family gatherings can get. David's voice remains perfectly polite, because from where I was sitting, it looked like a pattern of behavior rather than an isolated incident. Mom wipes her eyes dramatically. Irina, you have to understand we were just worried about your future. We didn't want you to get hurt by unrealistic dreams. The gaslighting is so smooth and practiced that I can see why it worked on me. For so many years, they're rewriting history in real time, turning years of deliberate cruelty into concerned parenting. But I'm not the same person who used to accept their version of events. You weren't worried about my future, Mom. You were embarrassed by what you thought was my failure. There's a difference. We love you, she insists, reaching out toward me like she wants to touch my arm. We've always loved you. You love the idea of a grandchild, I correct her. You love that David has money and status. You love that Alex Chen wants to buy my company for $50 million. You don't love me. The words hang in this desert air between us, harsh but true. Alex Chen, who has been quiet throughout this entire exchange, clears his throat from where he's been observing near his car. Actually, about that acquisition offer. He walks over with the confident stride of someone used to making billion-dollar decisions. After witnessing the strength and character Irina displayed under extraordinary pressure last night, I've decided to increase my offer to $75 million. The number hits my family like another explosion. Madison actually staggers. Dad's fake smile freezes on his face. Mom stops crying mid-sob. $75 million. Combined with Grandpa's inheritance and David's considerable wealth, I'm suddenly looking at a net worth that dwarfs anything my parents ever achieved. Of course, Alex continues conversationally. The increased offer comes with one condition. I want to ensure that Irina has a stable, supportive environment during this transition. Any family drama or harassment that affects her ability to run the company would be very concerning to me as an investor. The threat is elegant and perfectly delivered. My family's financial future now depends on treating me with respect, because their behavior directly impacts my business value. David nods approvingly. That's very reasonable, Alex. Irina's health and peace of mind should be everyone's priority, especially now. Mom and Dad exchange desperate glances. They're trapped between their natural impulses to control and diminish me, and the sudden realization that I hold all the cards now. We want to be part of our grandchild's life, Mom says carefully, like she's negotiating a hostage situation. Then you need to earn that privilege, I reply. Real change, not just words. Family therapy, genuine apologies, respect for my marriage, my business, and my choices. Madison finally finds her voice, though it comes out bitter and resentful. So now we have to grovel for permission to be part of your life. You don't have to do anything, Madison. But if you want a relationship with me and my child, then yes, you need to show that you can treat us with basic human decency. David's hand finds mine warm and steady and real. The man who saw my family at their worst and still chose to stand beside me. The father of my unborn child who's already protecting both of us with quiet strength. Looking at my parents' desperate faces, I feel something I never expected. Not satisfaction or revenge, but a kind of sad clarity. They're exactly who they've always been. I'm the one who's changed, who's finally strong enough to demand better. The question is whether they can change too, or if this is where our story together finally ends. The weight of the moment settles over all of us like desert heat. 3 generations of Torres family dysfunction laid bare on Christmas Day, with my unborn child as the ultimate stakes in this emotional warfare. Dad runs his hands through his graying hair, a gesture I remember from childhood whenever his business deals went wrong. Irina, I need you to understand something. When I built Desert Peak Investment Group, I thought I was creating a legacy for my family. Seeing you succeed without me, without our help, it felt like rejection. His honesty catches me off guard, but I can't let one moment of vulnerability erase decades of damage. That's your ego talking, Dad, not love. You wanted me to need you, not to succeed independently. Alex checks his expensive watch and looks between David and me. I should mention that the merger timeline is aggressive. We'll need to begin due diligence immediately after New Year's. Any family instability could complicate the process significantly. The message is clear. My parents' behavior doesn't just affect me anymore. It affects my employees, my business partners, and now my husband and unborn child. The ripple effects of their toxicity have real-world consequences they can't control or manipulate. Madison wraps her arms around herself, looking smaller and younger than her 28 years. I hate this, she whispers. I hate that you're suddenly the successful one and I'm just the screw-up sister who peaked in college. It's the first honest thing she's said all day, and despite everything, my heart aches for her. You're not a screw-up, Madison. You're just 28 years old with your whole life ahead of you. But will I? She looks up at me with eyes that mirror the lost child she used to be before our parents turned us into competitors. Or will I always be living in your shadow now? David squeezes my hand gently, reminding me that I don't have to fix everyone's problems, especially not while protecting my pregnancy from stress. The shadows are getting longer in the desert afternoon, and I realize this conversation could go on forever without resolution. Some wounds take time to heal if they heal at all. The social consequences begin within hours of our Christmas Day confrontation. By 6 p.m., my phone is buzzing with calls from friends' business contacts and people I haven't spoken to in years, all wanting to know if the rumors about the Torres family meltdown are true. Word travels fast in Scottsdale's tight-knit business community, and apparently several of Dad's dinner party guests have been sharing their version of events with anyone who'll listen. The story gets more dramatic with each retelling, but the core facts remain consistent. Michael Torres publicly humiliated his successful daughter while she served his dinner guests, then had an epic meltdown when a billionaire exposed the truth. Alex calls me at 7 to confirm what he'd hinted at earlier. I've decided to formalize the acquisition offer at $75 million with guaranteed retention packages for your entire senior staff. Carlos and Sarah will have executive positions in the merged company structure. The generosity overwhelms me. Alex, you don't have to do this because of what happened with my family. His laugh is warm but firm. Irina, I'm not doing this out of sympathy. I'm doing it because you've proven you can build and run an exceptional company under the worst possible circumstances. That's exactly the kind of leadership I want on my team. By Monday morning, the fallout is in full swing. Dad's former colleagues at Desert Peak Investment Group are fielding calls from reporters and industry publications wanting to know about the Christmas dinner incident. Pat's real estate business takes an immediate hit when 3 high-profile clients cancel their listings, citing concerns about working with someone who treats family members so poorly. The irony isn't lost on me that my parents' reputation in the business community they've spent decades cultivating is crumbling because of how they treated the daughter they considered a failure. Carlos stops by my office Tuesday morning with a stack of newspapers and his tablet loaded with online articles. Boss, you need to see this. Phoenix Business Journal is running a feature story about family dynamics in successful Arizona businesses. Guess whose Christmas dinner gets the full expose treatment? The article is devastating in its matter-of-fact reporting. Torres family drama highlights toxic business culture, reads the headline, followed by a detailed account of the dinner party that makes my parents sound like villains in a made-for-TV movie. But what really catches my attention is the byline, Amanda Foster, senior business reporter. Amanda Foster, who was my study partner at Arizona State, my maid of honor at my secret wedding, and the person who convinced me to start Apex events in the first place. I called her immediately. Amanda, please tell me you didn't write that article just because we're friends. Her laugh is familiar and reassuring. Relax, Irina. I wrote it because it's news. The story of a successful CEO being treated like hired help by her own family touches on workplace discrimination, family business dynamics, and generational wealth transfer. It's exactly the kind of story our readers want. She pauses and her tone becomes more serious. Besides, people need to see the real cost of toxic family relationships. Your story isn't just about revenge, it's about survival. By Wednesday, the social pressure on my parents had reached a breaking point. Mom calls me in tears, begging for a meeting to discuss how to repair our family's reputation. Dad's former golf buddies at the country club are apparently giving him the cold shoulder, and several board positions he was hoping to secure have quietly evaporated. We meet at a neutral location, a coffee shop in central Phoenix where none of us are likely to run into anyone we know. Mom and Dad look like they've aged years in the past week. Their carefully maintained image of successful, loving parents has been shattered so completely that I almost feel sorry for them. Irina, we need to find a way to move forward, Dad says without preamble. This situation is damaging all of us. Is it? I stir my decaf latte, slowly buying time to choose my words carefully. Because from where I'm sitting, the only thing that's been damaged is the lie you've been telling about our family for the past decade. Mom reaches across the table like she wants to take my hand, then thinks better of it. We're willing to go to counseling, family therapy, whatever it takes, with Dr. Rebecca Thompson, I specify. She specializes in family trauma and has a reputation for not allowing parents to manipulate the therapeutic process. Dad's jaw tightens, but he nods. Fine. What else? Public apologies. At the country club at the Chamber of Commerce. Anywhere you've badmouthed me over the years? Full acknowledgement that you were wrong about my capabilities and character. The request clearly stings, but Mom nods reluctantly. What about Madison? Madison has her own choices to make. She can acknowledge my success and be part of our child's life, or she can continue being hostile and lose access to both me and her inheritance. It's a harsh ultimatum, but I'm done enabling toxic behavior for the sake of family harmony. My unborn child deserves better than the dysfunction I grew up with. Dad pulls out his phone and shows me a text from one of his former business partners. They're asking me to step down from advisory positions until this family situation gets resolved. My professional reputation is being destroyed. Then fix it, I reply simply. Not by covering up what happened, but by proving you can change. As I drive home to my penthouse, past the Scottsdale mansions where my parents' former friends are probably discussing their downfall over cocktails, I feel something I've never experienced before. Not victory exactly, but a profound sense of peace. For the first time in my adult life, I'm not responsible for managing other people's emotions or protecting their fragile egos. I'm just responsible for building the life I want with people who actually value me. The rest is up to them. That evening, David finds me on our penthouse balcony overlooking the Phoenix skyline, my hands resting on my still flat stomach where our child is growing. The city lights stretch out below us like scattered diamonds, and for the first time in weeks I feel genuinely calm. You know what the strangest part is, I tell him as he settles beside me with 2 cups of herbal tea. I spent so many years wanting their approval that I forgot what it felt like to approve of myself. David's arm comes around my shoulders, warm and solid in the desert night air. And now I realize that their opinion of me says more about them than it ever said about me. My voice is steady, matter-of-fact. I built something extraordinary while they insisted I was ordinary. That's not my failure to own. His kiss against my temple is soft and proud. Our daughter is going to grow up knowing her worth isn't dependent on other people's ability to see it, our daughter. The words still make my heart race with joy and terror in equal measure. She'll never serve at family dinners while her sibling gets praised. She'll never question whether she deserves love or success. My phone buzzes with a text from Madison. Can we talk? Just the 2 of us? I show David the message, and he squeezes my hand gently. Your choice, he says simply. But remember, you get to set the terms now. Looking out at the city, I've conquered the empire I've built. The family I'm creating, I realize he's absolutely right. The power dynamic has shifted permanently, and there's no going back to the way things were. The only question is whether they're ready to accept the new reality. 6 months later, I'm sitting in Dr. Rebecca Thompson's office for what she calls our family progress review. The changes have been remarkable, though not without struggle. Dad completed a 90-day alcohol treatment program and has been sober for 4 months now. The anger management classes have taught him to pause before speaking, something that would have seemed impossible a year ago. Mom actually refers clients to Apex events now, proudly telling her real estate contacts about her daughter, the CEO. The shift feels surreal sometimes, like watching strangers wearing my parents' faces, but Dr. Thompson assures me that people can change when the consequences become real. Enough. Madison sits beside me, 7 months pregnant with her first child. The pregnancy wasn't planned, but it's brought out a protective instinct in her that's helped her finally understand what I went through. She's been genuinely helpful with Apex Events marketing, using her social media following to promote our expansion into luxury wedding planning. The inheritance lawsuit was settled out of court after Madison realized that fighting me would cost more in legal fees than she'd ever recover. I kept Grandpa's 60% as he intended, but I established the Charles Torres Entrepreneurship Scholarship at Arizona State University. Madison actually suggested it during one of our therapy sessions, which Dr. Thompson marked as a major breakthrough in her recovery. The Apex Chen merger officially closed 3 months ago, making me worth $65 million on paper. More importantly, it's allowed us to expand nationwide while keeping our company culture intact. Carlos now oversees operations for the entire West Coast, and Sarah has taken our financial planning systems to markets we never could have reached alone. My daughter Hope Elizabeth Kim was born 6 weeks ago, weighing 7 pounds and 2 ounces with David's dark hair and what the nurses swear are my stubborn eyes. Holding her for the first time, I understood something profound about unconditional love that my own parents are still learning. Which brings me to tonight. Christmas Eve, exactly 1 year after the dinner party that changed everything. This time, the dinner is at my penthouse. This time, I'm sitting at the head of the table while my parents contribute respectfully to conversations about business politics and Hope's development milestones. This time, Madison helps serve dinner instead of being served, and she does it with genuine grace rather than resentment. Dad has been sober for 6 months now, and his public apologies at the country club and Chamber of Commerce meetings have slowly rebuilt some of his professional reputation. He's working part-time as a financial consultant, humble work that's teaching him skills he never developed during his banking years. Mom's real estate business has recovered as word spread about our family's healing process. Phoenix magazine even featured her in an article about successful businesswomen supporting their daughters' careers. She keeps the article framed in her office, though I suspect it's more about her own rehabilitation than pride in my success. Alex Chen joins us for dinner along with his wife Elena and their twin sons. The boys are fascinated by Hope, asking endless questions about babies that make the adults laugh. Alex has become more than a business partner. He's become a friend who understands the complexity of family wealth and expectations. As we gather around the table, David carries Hope in his arms while she sleeps peacefully against his chest. My husband has been my anchor through all of this, never pushing me to forgive faster than I was ready, never suggesting I owe my family absolution just because they've improved. Dad raises his water glass, a gesture that would have involved wine in the past. I'd like to make a toast to Irina, who taught us all what real strength looks like. We failed you for years and you succeeded anyway. That says everything about your character and nothing good about ours. His words are simple and direct, without the flowery language he used to use when he was trying to manipulate situations. Dr. Thompson has taught him that authentic apologies don't require elaborate explanations or justifications. Mom nods, her own water glass raised. You deserved better from us, and I'm grateful you're giving us the chance to do better now. Madison's toast surprises me most. To my sister, who showed me that success isn't a zero-sum game. Your achievements don't diminish mine. They inspire them. Looking around this table, I see something I never thought was possible. Not the family I grew up with, but the family we've chosen to become. It's taken professional help, legal consequences, and public accountability to get here, but we've arrived at something resembling functional. Hope stirs in David's arms, making the soft sounds that mean she'll be hungry soon. As I take her from him, feeling her warm weight against my chest, I think about the story I'll tell her someday about how we got here. I'll tell her that your worth isn't determined by other people's ability to see it. I'll tell her that success doesn't require anyone's permission, especially not from people who benefit from your failure. I'll tell her that family isn't just about blood relations, but about the people who choose to show up for you consistently, even when it's difficult. Most importantly, I'll tell her that she never has to accept mistreatment, manipulation, or abuse from anyone, no matter what their relationship to her might be. That setting boundaries isn't cruel or selfish, but necessary for building a life worth living. If you're listening to this story and recognizing parts of your own family dynamics, I want you to know that change is possible, but it requires courage. The courage to stop accepting unacceptable behavior. The courage to build your own success without waiting for approval. The courage to demand respect instead of hoping for it. Your value exists independent of other people's recognition. Your dreams matter regardless of who believes in them. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for toxic family members is to stop enabling their worst behaviors by removing yourself from situations where those behaviors flourish. You deserve to be seen, valued, and celebrated for who you really are. Don't settle for anything less. 5 years later, the Arizona Business Excellence Awards ceremony is in full swing at the Phoenix Convention Center, and I'm adjusting my acceptance speech one final time before taking the stage. Tonight, Apex Events is receiving the Outstanding Growth Company Award, our fourth major recognition this year. David squeezes my hand as we watch the presentation video showcasing our journey from a small Phoenix startup to a national hospitality empire with locations in 12 states. Hope, now 5 years old, sits between us in her navy dress, swinging her legs and whispering questions about why mommy is on the big screen. In the audience, I can see my parents beaming with genuine pride. Dad has been sober for 3 years now and works as a volunteer financial counselor for small business owners. Mom's real estate practice specializes in helping women entrepreneurs find their perfect office spaces. They've become the parents I always needed, just 20 years later than I wished. Madison sits with her husband and 3-year-old son, her own marketing agency thriving with Apex Events as her anchor client. We've learned to celebrate each other's wins instead of competing for scraps of approval from people who should have loved us unconditionally from the start. When I take the stage to accept the award, I look out at the audience of Phoenix's business leaders and see something remarkable. Carlos, now our Chief Operating Officer, managing operations across the western United States. Sarah, our Chief Financial Officer, who turned down 3 Fortune 500 job offers because she believes in what we're building together. Maria, our Executive Vice President of Culinary Operations, whose innovative catering concepts have been featured in Food and Wine magazine. But most importantly, I see Hope in the front row, watching her mother receive recognition for building something meaningful from nothing. She'll grow up knowing that women can create their own opportunities, that family support is something you can build rather than something you're born with or without, and that your worth isn't negotiable. As I hold the Crystal Award and smile for the photographers, I think about that Christmas dinner 5 years ago when everything changed. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is having people show you exactly who they are so you can decide who you want to become. The little girl who once served her family's dinner parties is gone. In her place stands a woman who built her own table, chose her own guests, and finally learned to take her rightful seat at the head of it all. And that, as they say, is how a real success story ends. Not with revenge, but with resilience. Not with bitterness, but with boundaries. Not with proving others wrong, but with proving yourself right. The credits roll, but the story continues.